We're going to talk a little bit about frequency tables and distribution. So a frequency table is exactly what we have listed below here. Frequency talks about the number of times a specific item occurs within a given interval. So what we have here is we have these guys being intervals. Sometimes they call them classes. And here is the frequency. Now, the thing about frequencies and the whole frequency tables is none of this shows exact numbers in the set. This is a result of tabulating how many numbers appear. For instance, in this case, there's 9 numbers within the interval of 60 up to 70, so that could include decimals. All right. And you don't know what those numbers are, but you get some idea of how that data is grouped. So, in each of these classes or intervals, we have a lower limit, 50 in this case, and the upper limit, this says up to 60, so it can't be 60, it's 59.99999. In many cases, they will give intervals of something like 50 to 59, and then go 60 to 69, etc., leaving out the possibility of decimals. So in any case, lower and upper limit of each class. And the class width is how much from this lower limit to that upper limit. And basically what you'd have to do is count. So if you count the number 50 all the way up to 59, there's 10, but then there's all of these decimals. So this is not super easy to give a class interval because you've got the 0.99999 situation. But in most cases, let's say they were just integers, it would go from 50 to 59, and that's actually 10 total numbers. And whenever we're doing frequency tables, we always want to make each class or each interval set the same size. Okay, so if this is 10, this is 10, this is 10, this is 10, and this is 10. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to actually do a frequency table. So we're going to be given a set of data in this table, and what I've done is I've arranged it from smallest to largest in numeric order. That's going to be the first thing you're going to do all the time. It just makes it easier to organize the numbers. And then we're going to start concentrating on what we actually want this to look like. So you've got to decide on first how many different classes you want. And for the most part this year, we're going to use 5. There are other teachers that you may come across say, I want 8 classes, 7 classes, 3 classes, whatever. But we're going to say 5 for right now. That's not the end-all be-all, but if they don't give you a set number of classes, we're just going to go 5. And most of our examples will not say make 6 classes or 8 classes or whatever. They're just going to say create a frequency table or do a frequency distribution on this data. So in that case, if there's no special instructions given, we're going to go 5 classes. To get those 5 classes and the size of those 5 classes, we're going to take the high number, divide it by the low number. So in this case, we have 50 and 50, or 23, sorry. And we're going to subtract those two. And then we're going to divide it by the total number of classes we want. We said we're going to have 5 classes. So we divide that and we get the number of 6.2. Now you can't really have 6.2 as a class size. So what we're going to do is we're always going to round any decimal up. And it's not even necessarily a round. We're going to just move it to the next whole number above it. So 6.1 goes to 7, 6.9 goes to 7. It's not a rounding case. You're just going to move it up. So the actual class size, or the class interval, goes from the low value up to what the high value is going to be, and that's going to be 7 numbers above. So we could count this if we wanted to. And if we counted from 23 and 7 numbers up, counting 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, all right, then we actually get to 29 for our next number. Now, if you don't want to count, you can calculate it by taking the low value, add that class width, which is 7 in this case. That's what we calculated, all right, after moving it up from 6.2, and then subtract 1, all right, and that gets us a total of 6 to move that guy up. So you add 6 to all those numbers, but your class size is 7. Now we're going to do a frequency table, and we're also going to show what a frequency distribution is. So here again is our table. I calculate the numbers from 23 to 29, and I have a total of 2. Then I look from 30 to 36, and we have a 2 again for our frequency. From 37 right here all the way to 43, there's a total of 14 numbers. 44 to 50, we get 6 numbers, and 51 to 52, 2 numbers. Now, a frequency distribution, or also many times called a histogram, is what we have over to the right here. And in this, you have your classes listed below, and then you have interval values moving up on the vertical axis. Now, the difference between a histogram and a bar graphs typically have separate bars moving up and down, and they may reference different subjects as you're going through. But frequency distributions always have these class numbers below, whereas bar graphs could have labels like, I don't know, bunnies, wolf, lion, etc., etc. They don't give intervals, but they do give frequencies typically, or certain types of numbers on a vertical axis. So anyways, if we take a look at this graph, we could kind of say that it's somewhat symmetric. If this was a little higher, I'd say I'd be more inclined to call it definitely symmetric, but it doesn't really tail off to either side, so we're going to say it's a relatively symmetric graph, somewhat normal. All right. If this had a couple more ones or 2s as my intervals going to this side, I might call it left skewed. So now if you're just given a frequency table as such with our intervals or classes up here and our frequencies down here, we can answer a couple of questions in this chart. For instance, what's the lower limit of the 4th class? Well, I count my classes 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the lower limit of that is this number here, or 48. Class size, okay, we talked about calculating how big that class is. Well, we could count those numbers from 30 to 35, and we actually get 6. And again, we count 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. There's 6 numbers. Highest frequency, you're looking at the biggest number in the frequency total, so that's 14. Class midpoints, we also call those marks. You're basically going to take and find the average of the high and the low. So in this case, we take the average of those guys and we get, what, 32.5. In these guys, we get, let's see, 38.5. This guy, 44.5. This guy, 50.5. And the last one, 56.5. All right. And that's the basics of how to do a frequency distribution. Again, best thing you can do is get down this set of rules over here, and everything should go according to scale. Again, make sure you order whatever data you have in numerical order, and your life will be that much better. Okay?